you had a historic campaign run for president in 2016. And in the eyes of many people, mine included, you were screwed over by the DNC, as especially the WikiLeaks emails showed. What's your, just looking back, feelings about that? Are you angry? Are you upset?
Yeah, of course I'm angry and of course I'm upset. But, when you take on, in this case, the Democratic establishment, who have controlled that party forever, the moneyed interest in the Democratic Party, you're taking on corporate America, when you're taking on the corporate media, and when you're calling for a political revolution that creates a government that works for all and not just the few, the opposition is going to be extraordinary. But what I am extremely proud of from that campaign in 2020 as well is that we took on the anointed candidate of the establishment, and we showed, despite the fact the entire establishment, in the Senate, I had one supporter. There were 50 Democrats. I had one supporter. I had no governors supporting me, I think. Maybe a few people in the House. But we took on the whole political establishment, and we did, got millions of votes. And the ideas that we brought forth were ideas that they had to eventually deal with in one way or another. And if you look at the American Rescue Plan, which I'm proud to have helped write, during the midst of COVID, a lot of the ideas that we fought for were implemented in that bill, and I want to make them obviously permanent.
And you almost won. And a lot of people thought that you would win against Donald Trump.
I think we would have. I think Trump is I think he's a little bit crazy between you and me, but he is a smart politician. And he's appealing to a lot of the anger that working class people feel. And you know what? Working class people should feel angry, but they should make sure that their anger is directed in the right direction and not against people who are even worse off than they are, which is what demagogues like Trump always do. So, I think we had, as I went around the country then and now, we have a lot of support from working class people who understand that there is something wrong. And this is an incredible fact that no one talks about. All right, I'm going to ask you a question. Are you ready for this, Lex?
Let's go.
Here we go. Over the last 50 years, there's been a massive increase in worker productivity as a result of technology, right? Everyone agrees with that. And I don't know exactly what it is, but the worker today is producing a lot more than the worker 50 years ago doing something similar. Is the worker today, in real inflation accounted for dollars, making more money than that worker 50 years ago?
Well, there's a lot of close arguments there, but your point is well taken. It's either the same or a little bit higher or a little bit lower, depending on the statistics. Okay. It has not increased significantly, and the wealth inequality has increased significantly.
That is the point. So you would think that if a worker is producing a lot more, that worker would be better off, would be working lesser hours, etc. That hasn't been the case. And what has happened in that 50 years is, according to the Rand Corporation, there has been a 50 trillion with a T, redistribution of wealth from the bottom 90% to the top 1%. So you got CEOs today making 300 times more than their workers. You got 3 people on top owning more wealth than the bottom half of American society. So that's why people are angry. And they're worried that their kids may have a lower standard of living than they in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. So there's a lot of anger out there, and I think we tap some of that anger in a constructive way, essentially saying, you know what? We don't need so few to have so much in wealth and power. Let's distribute it more fairly in America.
I got to get back to 2016 because it's such a historic moment. So there's a lot of fans of yours that wanted you to keep fighting because you forgave, in the end, the establishment and joined them in support. And your fans wanted you to keep fighting for a takeover, for a progressive takeover of the Democratic Party. If you just look back and had to do it all over again, what would you do different?
Well, by the way, in terms of a takeover of the Democratic Party, we did try. We ran, do you know who Keith Ellison is? Keith is now the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota. He's doing a great job, really, one of the outstanding attorney generals in the country. And Keith was then a member of Congress. And we ran Keith to become the head of the DNC. And the establishment, from the president of the United States on down, went crazy. And they beat him by a few votes, not a whole lot. So it's, look, you're faced, and that's the exact same position that many of us are in right today. So people say, well, why did you support Hillary Clinton? Yeah, what's the alternative? Donald Trump? I think Donald Trump is an extremely dangerous person trying to undermine American democracy. So I can't support him. Hillary Clinton, obviously, his views are very, very different than mine. But that in that moment, that's where politics becomes really tricky. And it ain't easy. And, sometimes you have to do things that you're not really all that excited about. But I think it was right to try to do what I could to prevent Trump from getting elected. And in 2020, I did the same with Biden, and we had more success with Biden than we had with Clinton.
Well, there's this interesting story about a long time coming meeting between you and Obama in 2018, I believe. So Ari Rabenhoft, who was a former deputy campaign manager, wrote a great book, I would say, about you called The Fighting Soul on the Road with Bernie Sanders. And he tells many great stories, but one of them is your meeting with Obama. And he says that Obama told you, Bernie, I wish I could do a good Obama impression. Bernie, you're an Old Testament prophet, a moral voice for our party, giving us guidance. Here's the thing, though. Prophets don't get to be king. Kings have to make choices. Prophets don't. Are you willing to make those choices? Basically, Obama was making the case that you have to sort of moderate your approach in order to win. So was Obama right?
Look, and again, that's why politics is very, very fascinating. Sometimes you can run and lose and you really win if your goal is not just individual power, but transforming society. One of my heroes, you mentioned Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who is one of my heroes. Another one of my heroes is Eugene Victor Debs. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
For many reasons. Yes.
All right. Debs, many listeners may not know who Debs was. Debs was a union organizer in the early 1900s, helped form the American Railway Union, ran for president, I think, 5 times, ran the last time while he was in a jail cell because of his opposition to World War I and got 1 million votes doing that. Debs lost badly in every race that he ran in. In 1932, Franklin Delano Roosevelt ran for president, and much of what Roosevelt ended up doing was at least some of what Debs had talked about. Debs helped lay the groundwork for ideas. So sometimes you can lose and win if you're into transforming society. What my view is, where I disagree with Obama, is I think you have got to raise consciousness among ordinary people. And when people know what's going on and are prepared in an organized way to fight for change, they can make incredible changes. And we've seen that in recent years. Today we take for granted, we have a woman running for president of the United States, so I'm supporting. We have had other women running for president. We have women governors and senators. Not so many years ago in the United States Senate, there were 98 men, 2 women. All right. Even before that, 1920, it was when women got the right to vote. How did that change? How did women's role in society change? It changed because women and their male allies stood up and fought. Gay rights. Old enough to remember that anybody I knew who was gay, you think they would talk about it? Come out about it? No, they wouldn't. That's changed. We have seen, in terms of civil rights, massive changes. Change happens when people at the grassroots level demand that. We talked about healthcare a moment ago. We will get universal Medicare for all when millions of people make it clear that's what they want. So I believe politics starts at the grassroots level, and that's how you got to bring about change.
So just to go back to Obama, though, in many ways, he too is a singular historic figure in American politics who has brought about a lot of change. He's a symbol, I think, that will be remembered for a long time. What do you admire most about Obama?
Well, I know him. We're not best friends, but I know him well, and we chat every once in a while. First of all, don't underestimate what it was in 2008 to be the first black president in the history of this country. And I think few would deny that he's an extraordinarily intelligent guy. very, very articulate, one of the best speakers that there is in America. And that he and his family, and again, it's a lot harder than it looks. He and his family for 8 years, that's his wife, Michelle, and his kids, really held that office in a way that earned, I think, the respect of the American people, even if people disagreed with him politically. So he deserves, and again, don't underestimate. I think, years ago, there were people who said a black president in our lifetimes, never going to happen, can't happen, too racist the country. He did it. And that is a huge accomplishment. And I think, he has had some significant achievements in his presidential tenure. He and I, did disagree on a number of issues. I think he will tell you, I think his public stance is that, yeah, if he had to start all over again, he would do Medicare for all, single payer. But where we are right now, the best he could do is the Affordable Care Act. Well, we disagree on that. And we disagree on other things. But, I think he deserves an enormous amount of credit for what he has accomplished.
And he, like you, also gave a damn good speech opposing the Iraq War before running for president. And that takes courage.
Yes, it does.
But then it also shows that once you get into office, it's not so easy to oppose or to work against the military-industrial complex.
It is very hard. People do not fully appreciate how powerful the establishment is, whether it is the healthcare industry, whether it's the military-industrial complex, whether it's the fossil fuel industry. These people have unlimited amounts of money. They are very smart lobbyists in Washington, D.C., and they are very, very greedy people. They want it all.